Hey everyone, hopefully all are well. Welcome to the Rising with Dan Roth. Um, that was the wrong music for my intro, but I didn't think it through enough to fix that. So the reason that I wanted to come on is because you're going to notice over here, which this widget is not. So this is a widget right here, and let me see if I could fix this real quick. So let's bring that in. Let's pull this up. We actually could give this a little bit more distance. And then what happens is if I click here, then I can actually scroll up and down on here. For instance, and click into this link, which is not showing up so great, but that's okay. Let's try this. There we go. There's high resolution mode. So the reason I wanted to come on is because I started this new 6-part series um, called the Corporate DEI Playbook. And it was interesting for me because I've never been in a position where I thought I was an expert at many things, and I wanted to make sure that there was some resolve to what I was talking about. So I thought, okay, well, let's send out the newsletter and then let's come and do a live. We could test out the new intro, which I'm still working on. I'm always working on a couple of different kinks. So I wanted to come on and talk about it. So we're just going to talk briefly about what this looks like today, and really a little bit more than you would necessarily get within the body of this. So part one that I started out with in the newsletter is ERG partnerships and intersectionality. And to be completely frank, I didn't have a great understanding of employee resource groups before joining my previous employer. But when I came in, and especially on such a large corporate scale, there were these global ERGs, and I started volunteering to do some events, and I wound up getting involved. And Crystal Howard was the first person that was like, "Hey, we got to start talking about this," and I'm working with these different people. And when she brought up this idea to me that this is integral role within building sustainable systems, um, and within making structure change, then I really started doing my digging and started doing my research. And I realized just how gigantic employee resource groups are and how important those relationships are. So, and I'm not going to give away every single thing that's in the newsletter because it's not super, super long compared to last time. But I understood that for me to be able to have the conversations that needed to be had and to be able to gain the trust of those that were in the ERGs, there was going to have to be a difference between myself and everybody else that had come before, because history has dictated that white individuals love to make plans for dinner and then never actually show up. So because of that, I had a lot of work to do, and it was a lot of learning about who the different ERGs were. Uh, I looked at a lot of the data and I analyzed a lot of what was going on. I started asking my team questions. I wanted to understand why certain numbers were the way that they were. I got involved in the mentorship program and the reverse mentorship. This is before I worked to help create it. Uh, and I really did a deep dive. So within that deep dive, I understood that there were a lot of gaps when it came to representation. There were a lot of idiosyncrasies that didn't add up, and that includes wage. I'm not going to say wage discrimination, but differences in wages. And then I looked at it and I said, a lot of the work that's being done is for people that are coming in, um, that want to be involved. Sorry, a lot of the work being done, um, was for people coming into the company as opposed to those that were already there. So when something like that occurs, and then there's even more digging, well, why isn't anything being done for those that are currently employed by the company? And quite frankly, there were no good answers. And it goes well beyond simply what I'm speaking about now. There's depths of behaviors and red tape that would take so long to get through. But the point is that things weren't as they should be. So part of what I did was thinking, well, how do I resolve these situations? And it wasn't to say I was trying to resolve them in order to build credibility with these employee resource groups. I was doing it because it was the right thing to do, and because, hey, there's intuitive going from A to B. So I start creating these resources, and I started doing things on my own. I built out a program that brought in 150 Black men and women through into the interview process within a month, using some very, 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 very basic work that I will get into later on in the series, and then I'm happy to go through. Like, there's nothing that I'm gonna hold back when it comes to what I've done, what I've been doing, um, when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion strategy, because I there's not enough of us out there that are still working for me not to be transparent. I want to, if anything I say is going to help somebody, I want it to be able to help somebody, and that's just there's no two bones about that. So I start building out these resources. I create these initiatives. I do surveys. I gather my own data. Then at that point, I start sending the heads of the employee resource groups um, emails. Hey, my name's Dan. This is what I've done. This is what I'm sort of looking to do. I'd really like just to take a half an hour of your time, or an hour of your time, whatever the case may be, and have the conversations. And I set it up in a very structured way, uh, by purpose. I wanted to make sure that when I'm speaking to these individuals, they knew how serious I was taking it. So we get together, we have these conversations. I didn't honestly have a bad one. A lot of it really came down to, well, why is what you're doing different than anything else? Why are you doing this now when there's a hiring freeze? There were questions about certain motivations. There was questions about, well, we keep running into the same obstacles, so how do we overcome that? And the truth is that I can't always answer when it comes to, well, how do we get beyond the red tape? Now, I don't like red tape. I'll chop it up. I'll cut it up. I wasn't afraid of red tape. I knew coming in that there was going to be a lot of red tape, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I have a firm solution. All I can promise you is that I'm going to push through as high and as hard as I can. And for me, it's very much a mission over sacrifice. And for those that don't necessarily know what I mean by mission over sacrifice, and this is something I've been really going by more recently. Uh, Mission over sacrifice to me means that the goal of my work, my purpose in life, my mission in life is worth more than the sacrifices that I make to get there. So going back to something Future once told me, and the thing I start off my keynotes with, what are you prepared to lose? Well, what I'm prepared to lose, am I prepared to sacrifice? I'm willing to sacrifice everything because my mission is over here. My sacrifice is over here. So wind up having these conversations with these employee resource groups, and they go really well. Uh, I remember the first one I ever met with was the Latino group, and they were the ones that really asked me, why now, Dan? When we're in a hiring freeze, and my thought process on it was, well, what better time is there to do something and create something than in a slow time? Because that way, when it gets warm again, when it gets fast again, it's already built in and you don't have to sort of hit the pause. So, or you don't have to start from scratch. So that wound up working out. And then we wound up meeting with, uh, I met with the Native American, sorry, not the Native American. Apologies, trying to get the wording right, and I'm still recovering from illness. But I'll get back to that. But then Shrita Washington was the one that really helped me organize the meeting with the largest and longest running employee resource group, which was the Black ERG. And Shrita wasn't even able to make that meeting. So there were four co-presidents. There was Sharita and then Paul Adamson and two others. And I remember sitting there and I was nervous. I was nervous because it was a big deal. The buy-in was a big deal, and also Sharita put her neck out on the line to say, "Hey, I vouch for this guy." So she put me in a position of opportunity to meet with others that would, if I gained acceptance, then provide me an opportunity to make a bigger difference by collaborating. And I got a lot of questions, and I took nothing for granted, and they were not easy. Like you don't get into this work if you're expecting easy conversations. And throughout that time, there was one distinct point where everybody on the call said to me, like, "Okay, Dan, we're with you." And to their credit, they were the fastest in getting me directing me. Let me rephrase this: directing me towards the information I was looking for. And in turn, I said, "Well, here's this kind of stuff," and I was able to be reciprocal with it because I had people that I knew would benefit them, and it was able to develop that commonality. And then when it comes to these ERGs, there's also the alumni relationships, which I'll get into another time. And the thing about it is there's so much intersectionality with all of this. And people only look at it within a straight line view. They don't see that the world is way bigger than a one lane highway. And if we look, oh, I know why that is. Ooh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, I'm in the wrong thing. Whoops. Okay. I did not mean to do that, so whatever. I'm going to X out of here. I'm only going to be going for another minute or two anyway. So the thing with the intersectionality is, and you could check this if you want to look at the newsletter, is that within every employee resource group, you're going to have people that identify with different subsets. And subsets may be the wrong word to use, but forgive me. So you're going to have, so let's say you have the Black employee resource group. Now you're going to have people that identify as LGBTQIA, disabled, women in tech, all these different, all these different identities, because we are more than one thing. So when that happens, you realize that a 100,000 person organization can actually seem a lot smaller and a lot more manageable because of this intersectionality that comes into play. And then it's like this epiphany. Okay, well, maybe it's not such a tall ask. Maybe we can do these things together. And then you just have to connect the dots and show, okay, well, this is how. This is what we can work on. This is realistic. Um, this is what we need to do. And I know people may say realistic. That's not a great word when it comes to DEIB, and they're right. But excuse me, realistic can have a lot of different meanings. And in the frame of context that I'm using, realistic looks at goals 3, 6, 12, 24, 36, 70. I go in 6 month to a year to 3 year to 5 year goals. And then you see how that turns up. And you put that into picture. And that's what I mean by realistic. What can I accomplish in 6 months? What can I accomplish in 3 years? And then we take into account the sustainability aspect. And then when you look at all of these different issues that come with the diversity sphere, one of the core things that works to your advantage within this is that when you talk about alumni relationships, well, people that volunteer for ERGs are more than likely to volunteer for other organizations, including alumni relationships. Without delving too much into detail, what I could tell you is that through one connection I had with the Black ERG, I had access to every single HBCU alumni association in the country. Now, if those alumni associations see that there's actual work in progress being made, they're going to be more inclined to say, hey, we have these connections at this company. They're doing a lot. They're a safe space to work. Now, how can we build that relationship and bring in? And now you have these Black ERGs, these Hispanic ERGs, you have all these different alumni associations, and they're all conglomerating and saying, hey, this is a good place for our members. This is a good place for our future graduates. And doing that excuse me, is really empowering. And quite frankly, if you get to the point that they're doing that, it means that whatever your organization is doing, whatever you're collectively involved in, is really, really solid. So there's a lot to live up to, and there's a lot of work towards. So kind of recapping at the core of it, ERG partnerships to me are the single most important component when it comes to the corporate DEI playbook, because I truly believe that it's our relationships that lead to grassroots movements, and grassroots movements lead to collective change. There's nothing that's going to be done as an isolated entity. It's all going to be done in collaboration. So that's why I started with ERG partnerships. That's why it's so important to me. That gives you a little bit of insight. I'll move myself over here. So what you're going to see is part 2 is going to be representative interview panels. This could be a bit of a shorter one because I covered intersectionality actually in part 1. And what this is going to be doing is for probably next week, I'm actually going to show you and give you detailed idea for how you could create a resource to guarantee representation during interviews. and also some of the key elements to consider, and some of the things that you need to be aware of as we look at the fact that you can't make any assumptions when it comes to visual representation. So, how do we tackle it? All right, I'm clearly still not feeling great, but I wanted to come on and really cap that up. I'm probably going to go on the Peloton before my next call in 30 minutes. So it looks like I'm doing a 20-minute ride today. All right, I am going to see what kind of music do I want to go out to. I got it. All right, I'll see y'all later.
With a little love and some tenderness, we'll walk upon the water, we'll rise above the mist. With a little peace and some harmony,